Hello and welcome to Madam Speaker, the podcast by Hilmer's Network, taking a deep dive with our female candidates in the lead up to the next federal election. I'm Charlotte Mortlock and today we are joined by the Liberal candidate for the seat of Ryan, Maggie Forrest. Maggie, thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks so much for having me, Charlotte. I'm very excited to be here.
How's the campaigning been going?
It's been going really well. I've been in the field for almost 5 months now, and I'm really enjoying having the chance to get around and talk to people across Ryan. I've had a lot of shadow ministers come to visit, so I'm feeling really supported by the shadow cabinet. And I guess it also highlights that if the coalition were to win government, then and I were to win the seat of Ryan, we'd have a direct line to government ministers, and that means more for the people of Ryan.
Yeah,
I guess as I travel around and talk to people, it is heartbreaking, though, to hear about people struggling to pay their mortgages. We're talking to business owners who are struggling to make ends meet. And it's those things in particular that have really motivated me to put my hand up now because they need help desperately.
Yeah, for sure. Have there been any surprise things that you weren't expecting to hear from people that have been interesting?
That's a good question. I guess it was the business owners. I did a small business roundtable with Shadow Finance Minister Jane Hume in the Gap in Ryan, and they were telling me it feels like it's worse than COVID for them. They're on payment plans with the ATO, many of them thinking about closing their doors. The cafe owner we spoke to was working 70 hours a week plus driving an Uber, and that was a real shock that the situation is really that dire at the moment.
So tell me a little about, the seat of Ryan. Have you always lived there?
I've lived in Ryan the majority of my life. Grew up in Brookfield so Ryan's Brisbane's western suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty big seat. It stretches, the river is the one of the boundaries, and it goes all the way out to semi-rural areas in the west and then up north to more suburban areas in Mitchelton and Ferny Grove. So I was very lucky to grow up in Ryan, went to Brookfield State School, and we've got the University of Queensland in Ryan. And
that's good.
Yeah, that's where I got my arts law degree, finished in 2010. And I guess Ryan used to be a place where it was really attractive for young families to come, retirees as well, for people to come and start a business and expect it to thrive. But as I said, those things aren't true anymore, and I really want to turn that around.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that you lived in Ryan most of your life.
Yes.
And multiple kind of suburbs and areas around there, I would imagine.
Yes. So Brookfield to start, and the only other place I've lived in Ryan is Chapel Hill, where I live now, raising my young son Henry, who's 20 months, with my husband Chris, who's also a barrister. And, yeah, we love it there. It's great with lots of parks, and it's sort of known as the leafy western suburbs. So, very attractive for young families.
Beautiful. And what did life look like for you before you kind of went in and put your hand up for this seat?
Well, I was a full-time practicing barrister, and I'm still a practicing barrister, just not getting to do too many briefs while I'm on the campaign trail. But and I guess the areas I specialised in, mainly commercial law, employment, doing work for mum and dad businesses and some employees as well. Defamation became a bit of a specialty for me, and I started my career at the state DPP in Queensland, and I was lucky they started briefing out to the private bar, so I've got to do a bit of work for them and other regulatory prosecutions, for example, for ASIC.
And so was kind of life already quite hectic and busy before you ventured into politics?
Yes, indeed. Henry came along in December 2022, and I had about 6 months of maternity leave beginning of 2023, which contrary to what I thought before I had maternity leave, wasn't a break.
Yeah.
It's probably the most busy I've been. But
I think a lot of people are like, and on my maternity leave, I'm going to write a book. And it's like, no, you're not.
That's right. That was pretty intense.
A bit of a shock.
Yes, indeed. But a fun shock.
Yeah, beautiful.
And then I was, getting used to juggling, going back to work with looking after Henry, and made the decision to put my hand up to fight for change. And things have got possibly a little bit more hectic, but with a lot of family support and support from my friends, we're getting through.
Yeah, because one of the things that, with some of the work that I do, working with women, particularly mothers trying to get into politics, consistently they're, asked, how will you juggle parenthood? And I think, my skeptical analysis of that is that it's not your place to say how a woman divides their life. And, I think it's a bit sexist. But the most generous interpretation would be that people are just curious as to like how you make it work. And I think that, it is important for other women who are ambitious for politics to see other women and, they are able to have those conversations of how do you make it work.
Absolutely. And I really believe in if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I guess I love being a mum, but I also love to work and I want to do both.
Yep.
I think in Parliament House we've come a long way. There's a childcare centre in Parliament House and women breastfeed in the chamber now, but there is a long way to go. And I think having discussions about how to make a career in federal parliament more family friendly for both women and men is helpful. And I'm keen to have those conversations, especially if I'm lucky enough to get down there.
Yeah, one of the things that I have heard from some female politicians is it's actually easier when your child's really young because you can kind of move them around a bit more. It's a bit harder when they get into primary school.
Yes.
Is that what you've heard as well?
Yes, I have. And Henry came with me on trips to Canberra 3 times.
I've seen Henry at loads of things.
Yes.
He's great. He's a fantastic traveller.
Yes. So I guess if there was a good time to do this with children, as you say, I've heard that it's now, and I just, if I am successful, then we'll just make it work.
Yeah. I think just to go on a slight tangent, I think Henry came to something at Parliament House that was with the US.
Yes.
What was that?
I was on the Young Leadership Dialogue, which is part of the American Australian Leadership Dialogue. I was really lucky to be nominated by Peter Dutton to participate in that, and it's all about fostering the relationship between the US and Australia and those people-to-people connections. And I think Henry was about 3 months old when the first event happened in Canberra, and they were so accommodating.
Amazing.
For me to bring Henry with me, and there's even change rooms in Parliament House now, and they were really accommodating about finding rooms for me to breastfeed in. So that also gave me confidence that it is something that you can juggle with family responsibilities.
Totally. The US dialogue sounds like such an interesting opportunity as well. Have you been keeping abreast with the US election?
Yes. And I actually was lucky enough to be in DC recently for the Australian American Leadership Dialogue held there this year. And that week it was all about will Joe Biden remain the candidate or not, and that was all we could talk about.
Yeah.
And I flew back to Brisbane, and then the assassination attempt happened, and it was all about that. And of course, things have moved on very quickly from only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's going to really go down in history as like one of the most memorable election campaigns, regardless of the result. All I'm doing is inhaling US politics podcast at the moment. Like, I'm looking forward to getting in my car and driving. Every time I'm not driving, I'm like missing a podcast.
Oh, right. You'll have to tell me about some, because I'm on the true crime podcast at the moment. But
okay. Well, I do The Rest is Politics.
Yep.
I do Pod Save America.
Okay.
The Rest is Politics have a US and a UK version.
Okay.
And then I listen to a lot of Ezra Klein,
great.
Barry Weiss, honestly, I don't have a personality anymore. It's just full of US politics.
I'll have to get into it.
So I wanted to know as well, you've had such an impressive career as a barrister. I kind of read through your bio and there were so many interesting career highlights in that. Can you talk me through some of them?
Yes,
Can you toot your own horn?
It is a bit difficult for me, but I'm getting more used to it.
Yes.
I guess first of all, I had the opportunity to go to The Hague for 6 months in 2015 and work in the prosecutor's office at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia.
So, like, that's such an interesting opportunity. Like, how did that arise?
Yes, well, throughout uni I always had an interest in international relations and international law, and it was a bit of a specialty of mine. There's not so much of it available to practice in Brisbane, but it was something I wanted to do to, expand my mind and learn. And, I put in an application, and it was actually the LNP that gave me a bursary that meant I was able to go, because the UN internships are unpaid. So I was very grateful to receive that bursary from the party.
Wow, that's amazing.
And the tribunal is a tribunal set up by the UN. It's different to the IC, or the International Criminal Court, which is a permanent criminal court set up by the Rome Statute. So there were these special tribunals set up for the Yugoslav conflict and also the conflict in Rwanda. And those tribunals historically have had more success in terms of successful prosecutions, and there were a huge number of people actually prosecuted by the Yugoslav tribunal who ended up serving jail time.
Wow.
In UN countries in Europe.
That's so interesting. I think that working in that space must just be mind-blowing.
It was because with the state DPP I'd been involved in murder prosecutions that perhaps lasted for a month, which is, you might think, is a long time. But when you've got thousands of victims, the prosecutions last for years, and it takes years for victims to get justice. But it was heartening to see victims being able to come and tell their story at the tribunal, and for there to be actual outcomes, and also to hear about stories of humanity and survival amongst all that depravity that occurred.
And I also read that you kind of did some work for the High Court and in counterterrorism as well.
Yes. I got to appear in the High Court in 2019, which was really a career highlight.
It's a pinch me moment.
Absolutely. I definitely watched the castle in the lead up to that.
I was just about to say, I feel like I would be in the castle.
Yes.
I'm glad that you brought it up. I was like, don't say it, you'll sound like a bogan.
It's one of my favourite Australian movies, or movies full stop.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to say that I was feeling very nostalgic for that movie at the time. But Cambridge was another real career highlight. Straight after the Hague, I went there to study criminology, and that was 2016. And at the time, Islamic terrorism and radicalisation via social media was really in the news a lot. And so I wanted to delve deeper into that, and that's what I focused my dissertation on.
Yeah.
What I did, just to sort of cliff notes in terms of what I discovered, was that even when there was significant radicalisation via online and social media, in each case there was always some connection in real life that sort of first enticed the person in, which was a bit of an interesting finding.
That is an interesting finding. So I did want to get to that, but now you've created the perfect segue. So we'll go to kind of your passion around social media, because it is something that you and I both share.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about kind of what you see as the biggest obstacles and what the solutions need to be.
I know it's an issue you're passionate about, and for me it's really come into sharp focus since the birth of my son, because I think about how I finished high school and I was really lucky to not have social media. I think it was MSN Messenger was the worst we had at the time, and it wasn't until sort of the end of university that Facebook really became popular. And I just look ahead to when Henry goes to school and think about just all of the negative effects that we're seeing in the data in terms of social media, the bullying that starts at school and then can continue at home via social media, the increase in suicide rates in adolescence. Basically, it seems all bad for particularly young people.
Yeah. There's few upsides to it. Like I've had people, because I do speak about it so frequently, I've had people kind of say to me, but, you know, there are people who have no sense of community and they have found a community online.
Yes.
And I do take that point. But I do believe that, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
And if Like someone said the other day on a podcast that they thought that MySpace was actually the perfect social media because it was chronological. There was no algorithm.
Yes.
And I'm just like, well, let's get rid of the ones who don't want to comply, who aren't willing to reform enough. Like my big thing's obviously that I hate social media algorithms because I think the algorithms are part that radicalise people and send them down rabbit holes. But why couldn't we have an Australian business that created a new social media network that didn't have the sinister ramifications? And sure, like whatever your niche thing is as a 14-year-old or 16-year-old, you might be able to find a community that like that online, but it doesn't. It's like at the moment there's this all or nothing. It's like you take what Meta says or we have nothing at all. And I just don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I like what you say about necessity being the mother of invention because we've seen a whole lot of apps developed to make our lives more convenient, Uber and Uber Eats and things like that. So why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Do you know anyone who's interested in starting one? I'd love to talk to them.
I don't know. Well, I seriously don't understand that. Like, I personally think that Microsoft will have a massive resurgence because it is a more trusted brand that is associated with kind of an earlier time before the internet went completely loco. And I just went to Europe and I took a Nokia.
Oh, okay.
I did a digital detox. I
saw that, yes.
Left my iPhone and used a flip phone.
Yes.
And, Eton, the fancy school in the UK,
yes.
they have banned iPhones and all of their students get Nokias.
Yes, okay.
Like, I don't know, like they're just such simple solutions that if those organisations like Apple aren't going to comply and fix them on their own accord, then we will find other solutions.
Well, that's right. And I see that the New Zealand Prime Minister introduced a ban of phones in school in New Zealand recently too. But that's so interesting. You took a Nokia overseas. I was wondering how you did your digital detox. But that's sort of what I'm thinking about the future. Like, do I give my son a Nokia and so at least he can call me in an emergency?
Yes.
But the problem is the peer pressure. There's more and more peer pressure to get on social media and have an iPhone earlier and earlier. But
Jonathan Haidt, who's been massive in this area, he wrote the book Anxious Generation. He basically is trying to be like, hey, parents, if you all get together, if everyone in the classroom agrees on it or the majority, then there's no peer pressure.
Yes.
And I totally agree with that. Like it just takes a little bit of leadership from some of those P&Cs to be like, hey, because a lot of the research he has says that kids don't even like it. Like if you say, were you happier without your phone? Most of them are like, yeah, but like they know they're addicted to it.
Yes.
And as parents, that is our responsibility to do that. And I really hate it.
Yeah, and I applaud you for talking about it so often. And I think, as you say, talking about it and encouraging parents to have a different view is important. The Coalition has put forward a policy to reduce to increase the minimum age to access social media from 13 to 16. Which
I think is so common sense, like so logical.
Yes, absolutely. So that's I guess what the Coalition's doing in that space. And hopefully that also starts a conversation among parents of school-age children at the moment too.
Another thing I know that you are passionate about is skincare kind of being targeted to young girls online.
Yes.
Talk me through a little bit about that.
Yes, well, I read that there were social media, the algorithm promoting skincare products that are designed for older women to young girls who really don't need them and shouldn't be spending exorbitant amounts of money on things like that. And I guess that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to keep your attention and to lure you in. And I just think that it's not what we need.
No.
I also read that I think it's just 8 minutes of looking at social media content that's sort of negative for your body image can have a real life impact on your body image and how you think about yourself. So although there's so many body positive accounts and things, there's still a lot of stuff on social media that is negative in terms of body image.
And that's the thing that frustrates me about the algorithm. If it's sending young girls stuff that they know is going to have an impact on like making them be obsessed with being too thin,
That's
then
right.
why can't they correct that algorithm to say, hey, we can see this young girl is continually looking at this, so we're going to send her a more diverse range of women.
Yes.
I don't actually understand why that is so hard for them to do.
Yes.
And I totally, to your point, like it's like some of those skincare products are really potent. Like you don't know what it's doing to interfere with an 11-year-old girl's skin and if that would impact her. But more or less, like I didn't wear any makeup when I was that young. Like I was playing netball and
absolutely.
that was the joy of being young, that you didn't
right.
have to think about your appearance, that, you know, you were just being silly and adventuring and, you know, doing dumb kid stuff.
Well, that's right. And it's just creating a situation where young girls are really focused on what they look like when they really should be out there enjoying their childhood, and like a lot of us in previous generations got to do.
Yeah. It's a real shame that they kind of didn't get that experience. And I really hope that we're at a point now where there's enough people in leadership who fix it for the next generation who come through. Because I can't believe that we just let that generation go through completely without barriers or guardrails for that.
That's right. Well, they had a completely different adolescence
Totally.
to what the generation before did.
Particularly compounded by COVID.
Indeed.
So we've mentioned those things. If you were, you know, lucky enough to be elected for Ryan, what are some other things that you would focus on? You can be local or it can be broader policy.
Sure. I think the absolute number one issue the coalition has to address is cost of living. But in terms of a policy area that's really relevant to my background, I'm really passionate about using my experience in criminal law to ensure people are safe in their homes and to deal with crime. Peter Dutton came to visit Ryan fairly early after I was pre-selected, and we had a round table with some local mums and business owners who'd been affected by crime. And what struck me was they were scared in their beds because they've had their sanctity of their home violated, often by young criminals who are there to steal a car and drive it around and post about it on social media, and they'll then get a notification from police that the car's been found torched. So sort of for no reason, just for fun and to post about it. So that's something I'm really passionate about addressing, because crime historically hasn't been a really significant issue in the electorate of Ryan, but the statistics and the stories I'm hearing are really showing that it is.
Yeah.
And although it's in many ways a state issue, there are some things the coalition and a federal government could do given their federal powers. And one of the things the coalition is putting forward is what's called post and boast laws. So where we have that situation where young people post about and boast about crimes on social media, there'd be a maximum penalty of 2 years imprisonment and a ban on social media or accessing social media for up to 2 years.
Yeah, which again seems logical to me, because it then just encourages copycats. Like if someone who you think is cool is doing that, then it's just so ridiculous that has even become a thing.
Another negative impact of social media. As you said, there are some positives, but there's a lot of negatives.
Yeah. Any other areas that kind of you've looked at that you think that you could particularly, offer some insight given your background?
Yes. Well, I guess in terms of immigration, given my background in law and studies in counterterrorism, it's an area I'm passionate about, national security and immigration, and seeing things like the recent High Court decision and Labor being ill-prepared for that decision is something that really upset me, and it's things like that I'd really like to change if I'm successful and if the coalition wins government.
Yeah, fantastic. There's some really kind of great topics and areas that I think you would have a great contribution towards. We're going to do some rapid-fire questions now.
Excellent.
Can you recommend a book, movie or podcast that you've enjoyed recently?
Well, my all-time favourite book is called A Life in the Day of Alexander Denosovic. It's a small book I picked up at a uni book sale a long, long time ago, but it's about someone who spends a day in a Russian gulag, and I mean, it might sound pretty serious, but the detail the book goes into and the way he describes life and just the joy of having an extra piece of bread. Whenever I'm sort of feeling sorry for myself, I like to read that book and just remind myself how lucky we are to
be grateful.
Live in a free country like Australia.
Yeah, we are. And we really don't. It's been interesting actually to see the Democrats in the US. They've really clung on to patriotism in this election.
Yes.
And I really hope that we see that occur in Australia because I feel like over the past few years, like not enough people are talking about, obviously Australia has flaws and, we, can improve ourselves, but it's still such a fantastic country and we need to be grateful and patriotic about it, I think.
100%. And my studies and work overseas absolutely highlighted that to me, that we do live in the best country in the world. And I know lots of people do agree with that. And as you say, it'd be great if we can have more people agreeing.
Yeah, and saying it out loud.
That's right.
Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Definitely coffee. Being a barrister, I've had 3 already today.
Have you?
Yes.
What's your usual?
An almond cappuccino, which is a very Western suburbs drink, I think.
And would you do is 3 or 4 a day the norm?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Cutting down when I was pregnant was very difficult, but I did it.
Yeah, good for you. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Probably from my mum, who is a breast cancer survivor. She says, enjoy every day, be kind to people, because tomorrow is not promised.
Beautiful. That's very important to remember. And what's your favourite place that you've ever been to outside of Australia?
It's hard to choose one outside of Australia, but I think Cambridge really has a special place in my heart, given it's just so beautiful. It's got so much history and the wonderful friendships I was able to form there, and just the wonderful time I had there studying and expanding my mind.
Yeah, awesome. Obviously, with the work that Hilma's does, we are, very big on trying to support women.
Yes.
To finish out the episode, I wanted to know, who is a woman that inspires you?
Yes. Well, there are plenty of female politicians that inspire me, but I think today I'll choose Susan Kiefel, who was the first female QC in Queensland and, of course, the first female Chief Justice of the High Court of Australia. And she has broken down a lot of barriers for women in the law, and I'll never forget the contribution of women that have gone before. I think there's still a long way to go, but we have come a long way, and I'm really grateful for the women that have paved the way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Maggie. Really appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Charlotte.
Authorised by C. Mortlock, Hilma's Network Foundation Limited, Sydney.